Welcome to Cigar City Radio, episode number 3. I'm your host, Randy Ojeda, and making the magic happen is Jason Solanes.
How's it going, everybody?
How is it going? So if you're listening to this, thank you for listening. We really appreciate it. And if you subscribe to this show, we thank you even more. So we're trying to get onto a pretty rigid schedule with this show. We'll have new episodes coming out for subscribers every Monday, and those episodes will go live for the rest of the world on Tuesday. So if you subscribe, you'll get an episode early, and you can help us keep doing what we love to do. Somebody else who's been helping us do what we love to do, big thanks to George Harris from Creative World Recording. George is somebody we've known for a very long time, way before we had this podcast, way before we had a company, and we were just a couple kids trying to figure out our instruments. And George has always believed in us and always believed in what we're doing. We actually recorded this episode in not our usual space, and the room that we were in had a noisy air conditioner. So in pretty much the entire background of the recording was just this AC hum, and we didn't have the technology to get rid of that sound. Luckily, George worked some magic on it and turned out this amazing sounding version of the recording that we were able to put together and put out for you. So if you're looking for quality recording, audio editing, mixing, anything you need that involves sound, George Harris is your guy, creativeworldrecording.com. Our guests are the band Dtcv, the project from novelist, screenwriter, and former Guided by Voices guitarist James Greer and French multi-instrumentalist Lola G. And these guys are pretty awesome.
Yeah, their music is fantastic, and they're just wonderful people in general.
Yeah.
They're very professional.
They really are, and they're like really accomplished people. Like James is very humble, but I mean, he's written movies and books, and
he's been an editor for Spin.
Yeah, for Spin magazine.
Seriously.
But when you talk to him, he's just like the coolest, most down-to-earth guy. And the more that we talk to Lola and Jim, I guess we can call him Jim now, right? I think
we can.
We're at that
safe.
point.
We're in the
Yeah,
zone.
all right. So the more we got to know them and learn about what they envision for their band and where they want to go next, the more we realized that working with them would be a great fit for us and what we do. As of today, we've officially added them to our artist roster. So Dtcv, welcome to the Cigar City Management family. We obviously love this band, and we couldn't be more excited to work with them going forward. So next up for Dtcv, they are heading to Europe for a 2-month-long European tour, starting with a show October 27th in the UK. From there, they'll be performing in Germany, France, Italy, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland. I mean, pretty much all over Europe. It's pretty insane. They're playing almost every day between now and December, like the middle of December.
I looked at that lineup of shows they have, and I was absolutely blown away.
Yeah, so they're going to be a very tired band by the end of this year. For tour dates and music links, head over to dtcvband.com and check these guys out. Here it is, episode 3. Detective.
Correct.
Yeah, right.
Just like it sounds.
Just like it sounds. Yeah, I was going to ask about Dtcv. How did you get detective from that?
Well, no, it's the other way around.
We started out as detective.
Yeah.
Well, we started out as Détective, the name of a Jean-Luc Godard movie that we both liked and thought would be a fun. It's an
obscure film reference.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but not too pedantic, because it's kind of like a crappy 80s movie. And there's a French rock star in it, so we just thought, oh, that's the perfect name.
Perfect name.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a perfect name because it has accent marks, and the internet is not kind to accent marks.
Oh,
it just
totally
strips
not.
them right out. And so then when we switched to just plain old detective, you get every homicide case that comes up in the last.
Yeah, it's kind of an ungoogleable name.
Yeah, exactly.
And we also got mixed up with this other band from the 70s who only put out 2 albums called Detective, but they're on Spotify for some reason.
Damn 70s bands.
So like we'd be playing a show somewhere and they would pull that out, and it's like, so you have like a picture of like 4 guys who look like Led Zeppelin, and it's like they think it's us. Like,
Right, and you guys look nothing like Led Zeppelin.
I mean, like I would love to, but I'm not Jimmy Page.
Right. And the new LP is called Confusion Moderne. Is it
Moderne.
Moderne, and the lyrics are almost exclusively in French.
Yeah, actually.
And-
yeah.
and
There's
what-
one song in English.
The one
right?
that I do.
The one that you do.
And why did you decide to just go all French?
It was kind of random. I never wrote songs in French before, but I listened to a couple albums. My friend Anton from the band Brian Jonestown Massacre.
Yeah, great
he,
band.
He doesn't speak French. He's not French, he lives in Germany.
Right.
And he just like randomly did this album in French. That sounded really awesome.
Sure.
And then I stumbled upon some Zydeco stuff that was in French. And it was kind of like, I never really listened to it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is like rock in French and it sounds good, so maybe I can do it.
Yeah, well,
And
the
then,
Zydeco
you
thing
know,
makes sense, right? Because you got that Cajun
yeah,
influence.
and I never really listened to it, and there's some badass stuff. Even though there's accordion, and I don't like accordion, but it's like so I was like, oh, and then suddenly songs in French. Came
There's a prejudice in France among French bands not to sing in French. They think it's corny for some
Interesting.
reason. So
unless you're doing like French pop, like pure like 60s stuff.
Right.
In which case, then
they
yeah.
just don't think French is a rock language.
Yeah, which is interesting because it's such like a beautiful
And I-
language in general that you'd think that more bands with a sort of beauty element to them would.
It just doesn't go with rock very well usually. I don't know, but it's
I mean, it works
probably-
for you guys. I mean,
it's a
but you
prejudice.
kind of have that mix of that French pop with kind of the post-punk shoegazy type thing, so it works. For
Well, I'm
you.
glad it works.
Well, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, the songs turned out really, really well. I mean,
I was surprised.
And now, Lola, are you from France?
Yes, I grew
Okay.
up there. I was born there. My childhood life was there, and then my adult life has been here. So but I am French.
So for you, it was kind of more of a natural thing to
Yeah,
sing in
but
French?
well,
or-
no, not really, because when you live here, it just doesn't feel right to sing in French. So, but then suddenly it felt right. So I don't know.
And how have audiences responded to that? Are they confused when they come to the shows and they don't understand
Some
the
of them,
lyrics?
yeah, some of them, but like most people are like, "Oh, cool, it's in French."
Yeah,
I don't understand, but it's nice.
it is. It's yeah, it
the
works.
thing is, like live, we're so loud that you can't really hear the lyrics anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't make that much of a difference.
I mean, you can, but it's
Yeah.
like with any rock band, it's like a lot of times you just don't really pay attention to the lyrics. It's in a live setting in particular
Yeah.
because it's more like it's just the song, the melody, and the whatever else that goes with it is it's the emotion that's in
Sure.
the music that you respond to, and I think that like if we didn't tell people we were singing in French, I'm not sure they would know sometimes
Sure,
because
yeah.
because the songs go quick and you're just like the lyrics are blah 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 it's like
Yeah.
Right, and it doesn't sound like a gimmick. Like it doesn't sound like you're singing in French to sing in French.
No.
It
yeah,
sounds
and
like
that's
it fits
exactly
it serves
what.
the songs.
Yeah,
you know?
I wanted to avoid that for sure.
Yeah.
because
it
that would
did change
that
the
would've sucked.
songs. I think.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it changed the way that.
Yeah.
I mean, and these are and this is my favorite record that we've done. So it changed the songs in a good way.
Yeah.
But I don't think we're gonna keep doing it. Solely in French. I don't.
Yeah, the next one will be half and half, I think. Oh, not half and half, but there'll be a few songs in French for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about this record too. What was going on when you guys put it together, and what was kind of the idea behind it?
Well, we were living in Joshua Tree in the desert, and we recorded in LA with our friend Joel Jerome, who does a lot of the psych bands, like locally.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Burger Records.
He's Burger Records bands.
Lollipop Records.
And he's cool, and so we wanted to record with him. But the overall, I guess, I don't know if there's a theme to the album, but it's just mainly I think ideas about what's going on, like politically and environmental problems and climate change and just kind of general ideas, but not really it's not really a direct political album. It's more poetic, but
Sure.
but there's that that thing in there.
It's a poetic political
It's-
album.
It's a poetic, yeah.
It's like symbolists, like the French symbolists, like
Yeah.
Baudelaire, who would address like serious subjects, but like in an oblique way. I think
It's like modern and anti-modern. It's sort of like, like when you're like struggling with, you like your iPhone, but also you don't like what it does to the world.
True.
So that's basically like, that's why it's called modern confusion.
Well, I mean, there's the trade-off. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
to be able to record an interview straight onto a computer in a digital format, a digital file, that's great. That's convenient. Otherwise, you'd have to haul around these tape recorders. Then you'd have to digitize it and put it on the internet or however that would work.
Yeah, there's no way
10
we'd be
years
able to
ago.
do this.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
there's like huge advances in like technology have helped music and other things in a lot of ways, but it's also the trade-off is they've also destroyed music in a lot of ways.
Outside of music too, technology sort of makes me feel dumber. I feel like I don't even know my own city anymore because I use Google Maps to get everywhere. So if
Yeah.
somebody asked me just to get to a place, I might not be able to.
Yeah. There's been scientific studies about that where they have two different groups, like one that uses technology and the other one doesn't. And the one that doesn't is more able to solve problems, like,
Yeah, that makes sense because I mean that's really what we're taking out of the equation is the whole problem solving and memory component of life. Is now it's I don't have to remember it, I'll just Google it.
Yeah, well, your brain is in your iPhone.
Yeah, and that's terrifying. You had the video come out directed by Steven Soderbergh.
Yeah.
Which is totally awesome. How did that come about?
That was through Jim.
I asked him and he said yes. That's how that came about. He was I knew he was in the middle of he was shooting a movie and I emailed him and said, you wouldn't happen to have any footage lying around, just random footage that you could cut into kind of an experimental abstract video for this song? And he goes, well, as a matter of fact, I do.
I mean, he's Steven Soderbergh.
Yeah,
I hope he
He
does have a
always
lot of
have
random
footage.
footage.
He's always got his camera with him, so he has all this stuff. But then what he did with it was completely. I think I had no idea what he was going to do, but what he did was completely unexpected. He kind of riffed off because he doesn't speak French. I told him what the song was based on and a little bit about. I mean, the title Histoire Seule is kind of taken from again Godard, who did Histoire du Cinéma, which the history of cinema. He did a huge TV series in France that's been put on DVD, and it's just amazing. It's all this montage, and it's really good. But one of the chapters is called Une Histoire Seule, and so we just took Histoire Seule as the title. So I told him that, figuring he might do some sort of French 60s homage, and then he totally didn't. He just took the history part, and I think that resonated with him, and then he cut in all this Abe Lincoln stuff. I mean,
It works totally. It's
I've never
great.
I've never asked him what it was about because I'm always afraid he's going to say, it's not about anything.
Yeah, he doesn't seem like the kind of guy you'd ask for a re-edit either.
Yeah, no.
No.
He was he did it, he sent it. I said, thanks. He said, I had fun. It was a lot of fun, so.
And is he somebody that you've known for a while?
Yeah, actually. We met in about 2005. He wrote the introduction to the book about Guided by Voices that I wrote at the request of Bob Pollard.
Yeah, and I was going to say that you were in Guided by Voices, but you also literally wrote the book on Guided by Voices.
And again, that was by request. And when I say request, you don't turn down Bob because he's hard to refuse.
Sure.
So I did it, really under a super intense deadline, and it's not my favorite thing that I've ever written. But we did get Steven to do the intro, and that's how we met. And then he just started. He asked me out of the blue to write something for him. He knew I was a screenwriter, and so I did. And then that fell apart. And then he asked me to write something else. And that has yet to happen as well. But it's in theory is going to happen in the next couple of years. But he would send someone to kill me if I talked about what it was, because he's very, very controlling and private about the projects that he's doing. partly because they tend to fall apart. I mean, in Hollywood, that's what happens. Like,
Yeah, everything's on the shelf forever.
everything's on the
Yeah.
shelf, and then all of a sudden it happens.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't. You know.
Yeah, I feel like most things probably don't happen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
probably like
absolutely.
90%.
That's wild. Yeah, because before when we got you guys to come on the show, I was telling our intern who's 20, I was like, yeah, he was in the band Guided by Voices, or like a legendary indie band. He had never heard of him, but then we went on your Wikipedia page, and he's like, oh, he wrote Max Keeble's Big Move.
It's funny. It's and then a little scary that
that this new generation
that
sees
people,
you
well, no,
as
As
no,
Max
just,
Keeble's
just
Big
that movie is so old now that the kids who watched it, like that with the target audience, are now like adults essentially, and I'm like, that's like just makes me feel old. That was the first movie that I actually co-wrote it, but that was the first one that we did, and I thought like. It was like the first movie we actually wrote, and then it got made, and I thought, oh, this is easy.
yeah. This will just happen all the
It'll just
time
happen
now.
all the
Right?
time. And then it didn't.
Yeah.
I mean,
you wrote a few others.
Yeah, I've written a few others, and it just like, I mean, we could talk about this for hours, but the movie industry has changed since 2008 with the recession and with the Writers Guild strike, and so it's kind of just completely. The studios only want to make huge, big blockbuster movies now based on comic books, and so the sort of movie that I used to write isn't really getting made anymore. So you're sort of like all those things are kind of migrating to TV, which has gotten much better.
Yeah,
for writing.
There's this big renaissance of television right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You've not only seen the movie industry shift, but the music industry as well. I mean, I know you were an editor at Spin Magazine, so you sort of saw it there, and then also with Guided by Voices to what the music industry is now, which is a totally different thing.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't. It for all practical purposes, it doesn't exist unless you're Taylor Swift.
Right.
Everything's DIY. Now,
Yeah.
which is for good and bad. I mean, like GBV was DIY, but we also were on Matador Records, and we had promotion, and there was no social media, so there was nothing like we had people doing that stuff for us. Which is really helpful because
Definitely.
now when you're in a band, your full-time job is essentially self-promotion.
Yeah, marketing. You're like marketing director of your own band.
And it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
really, 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 really tiresome and annoying, but you have to do it.
Yeah, so like what are the differences between a tour in late 90s to a tour now?
Well, in that sense, not much. I mean,
You're still
Tours-
driving around in
Yeah.
Yeah, but tour support, like you had in the 90s,
well, in the
labels
90s,
would
like,
give you
for
tour
instance,
support.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you could go to, for example, when we toured Europe, they gave us like, I found out later, like something like $50,000 in tour support, which, I don't even know what we spent it on. I don't know how it was a 3-week tour. I don't understand how that cost $50,000. But it's like we didn't have a light show. We didn't have a crew. We didn't have, we had a driver,
Right.
and a band.
Well, then he got paid well.
Yeah, I know, apparently. I mean, there's plane tickets. Plane tickets are plane tickets, but I mean,
Right.
I still don't get it. But whatever. In terms of the actual logistics of touring, it's not. It's the same. I mean, the difference is, you can try to get people out to the shows through Facebook events and things like that, rather than someone putting up posters all over town.
Right.
That's
or
really,
handing out flyers.
Yeah,
Or-
hanging
yeah,
out flyers.
yeah.
That's really the only difference. I mean, the technology of touring is this. Oh, well, GPS. That's
Yeah.
the biggest difference.
I'm sure that helps a lot.
That's the biggest difference. We got lost all the time, and you had to you had maps, and you'd be like, "What? I have no idea where we are."
Yeah.
Or you'd print out directions, or you'd write down directions, to the club that would turn out to be wrong, and then you'd ask. And I mean, I can remember nightmare scenarios of trying to get out of Philadelphia. It's the hardest city to get out of in the world, because it's like their signs go this way and this way. It's like the 95. It's just you're looking for the 95. It's like the biggest freeway in the U.S. or highway. God, I'm so Californian now. It's like we're calling everything the.
Our drummer's making fun of us because we put the in front of freeways.
Because
Oh,
like
yeah.
in
'Cause
California,
the-
you go the 405, the 10. You take the 405 to the 10 to the 101 to the,
Right.
and like you don't do that everywhere else. It's like you take I-95. You don't
Yeah.
say the 95. And, you
Right.
don't
Yeah.
typically. But
And-
I can't stop doing that. So I'm like, we're looking for the 4.
So the Californian in you has been sort of
Yeah, well, it just it by osmosis. You
Yeah.
know, I've been there a little bit longer, but
Yeah.
at least like 10 years. So it does.
But you're not in California anymore now.
No,
You recently
We're
moved to-
temporarily based in Ohio
temporarily based in Ohio.
for like a couple years or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Columbus, Ohio.
So that's got to be a big change then, from being in the center of entertainment to, the middle of the map, right, in Ohio.
Well, we were in the desert for 2 years, so we were in the middle of nowhere in the cabin for 2 years.
Right.
So it's actually more like now we're back in the city, and I'm having a hard time like adjusting to cities
Yeah.
again.
I could see that.
Even though LA is a big city, but 2 years in
But you
the
guys
desert.
were in Joshua Tree, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I could see how that could be very different from, a winter in Ohio.
Yeah, which we haven't had yet. But
But
this is like 3 months old. Like we,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
And what prompted the decision to move to Ohio?
Well, for touring mostly, we just want to tour a lot, and it's difficult from California.
Yeah, we're more centralized
Yeah.
in the Midwest as well.
Because California, you've got 3 days through Texas to get anywhere.
True.
well, to Texas.
To
3
Texas,
days.
yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I mean. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, like,
Arizona, New Mexico,
Yeah,
and then it's
until
like
you
there's
get to-
nowhere to play.
yeah.
There's nowhere to play, and then you hit Austin.
Yeah.
it's more difficult
makes
to keep touring,
Yeah.
and not lose a lot of money.
Yeah, and I
when
never
you're
realized
there.
that because we started working with bands in New York and like the Northeast, and it was like, oh, well, you can just hit New York
Yeah,
and Philadelphia
yeah.
and,
That's
and
great.
and
In a
Boston
weekend.
and-
You can do a
totally,
weekend, and
totally.
it's like,
and you can
yeah,
drive
it's
back
crazy.
in between shows if you want.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
if you're in LA, it's like
You cannot do that.
Right. we set up a tour for a band early in the summer, and it was like, okay, now we have to get you to Portland somehow.
And it's 15 hours.
yeah, and that's
15
rough.
hours from San
Yeah.
Francisco. I mean, that's
Yeah,
like,
that's
because
true.
the major
Yeah.
cities on the West Coast,
Yeah.
you're going to hit LA, San Francisco, Portland,
Seattle.
Yeah.
and Vancouver if you feel like it, and San Diego down there if you feel like it. But that's
Phoenix.
it
Right.
in terms of major cities.
So you,
Yeah.
And then
Vegas,
you,
we've got
you
Vegas
can find
for-
these
Yeah.
little, if you're lucky, you might get a show
Yeah.
in like Arcata, which is a little college town.
right.
But
or you got to play like Bend, Oregon on a Monday. or
yeah,
something.
exactly.
Yeah.
It just sucks.
Yeah.
Basically.
Bend, Oregon on a Monday.
Well, the guy who runs
I'm like
our,
visualizing it.
the guy who runs our record label is also in Dead Meadow, this band Dead Meadow, and they were originally from the East Coast, and we were talking to him about this
Yeah.
before we moved. He said when they moved to LA, they definitely stopped touring as much.
Yeah.
By a lot, just because of the logistics and
Yeah.
the difficulty of it. And so yeah, that was a thing. That was like probably the primary reason.
That's number one reason for
The
sure.
secondary reason was just we wanted to change,
Yeah. Just less sun for a little bit. I think I've
Yeah.
had in 10 years
Yeah.
in Cal. I mean, I love California. It's my home really, but like I needed a little bit less heat and sun.
I mean,
for a while.
Yeah,
Don't blame
I mean,
me.
she grew up.
I'm
in,
from the Alps,
yeah.
So
Yeah. So you need mountains then.
yeah, which Columbus has no mountains, but
Right.
It has.
it's got
serpent
green. It's got a lot of green.
Green
Or like
I
the
like
Indian
green.
burial mounds. They're
Right.
not quite. They're not very high.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm from
Yeah.
I'm from New England, so we just wanted weather. Because
Yeah.
there's no weather. in
Yeah.
LA.
Seasons.
Yeah.
Yeah, seasons.
Yeah, seasons for a little bit.
Seasons.
And Columbus is really cool. It's a college, huge college. There's a
Ohio
lot of
State, yeah.
musicians.
Yeah. What's the scene like over
It's
there?
like
Well, it's traditionally
really
been.
nice.
It was very garage rock,
Punk rock, yeah.
in the '90s. A lot of great sort of punk rock, like New Bomb Turks and Gaunt and Cheater Slicks, and a lot of bands like that came out of Columbus in the '90s. Now it's more eclectic, I'd say.
but it's definitely a lot of punk rock type stuff. Yeah.
There's a lot of punk
garage
stuff, but there's a
punk.
lot of everything. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean.
Yeah.
I mean everything within whatever the range you want to call indie rock.
Right.
And there's a jazz scene, there's like a hip hop scene, there's like everything.
Yeah.
because it's the capital city of Ohio. I
Sure,
mean,
and
it's-
like you said, it's a college town.
Yeah,
So you
it's
get a
a
lot
huge
of
college
young
town.
It's really, really
students.
big. Yeah, college.
it's like it's like 100,000 students. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
we moved there at the end of whatever last semester,
in May or something.
and so the town's been kind of it wasn't quiet. It was just like then when the students moved back in, it was like, oh, okay,
They're back.
Yeah, the summer's over.
You drive down like the main
Yeah.
street like at a certain time, and it's like whoa! It's like you can't even like there's just so many students crossing the street.
Have you guys played shows there in Columbus?
Couple.
or-
Yep, and we're playing one. Actually, I'm very excited because we're playing with Shonen Knife
Oh, awesome.
at the end of October.
Yeah, that's kind of our
In Columbus.
warm up show for
It'll
the
be fun.
European tour because
Yeah.
we're going on tour in Europe for 2 months.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. So you guys are on tour now.
Yep.
How many dates are you doing?
This is a pretty short tour. It was like 10 days total.
We did
Yeah.
10 days in the beginning of September, and then we took a week off, and now we're doing another 10
Yep.
days.
And we're like right in the middle.
And then we
Right
have
now.
like 3 weeks off, and then we go to Europe.
Yep.
How long are you gonna be in Europe?
2
Forever.
Forever. You're just
Well, I mean,
No,
we're-
it's a
the-
2 months tour, which I've never done.
The tour is 2 months,
a
and
long
then since it ends like a week before Christmas, we're probably gonna
Yeah.
Lola and I
Yeah.
will probably stay.
I have to go say hi to my parents.
oh, of course.
You know.
Yeah. How often do you go back to?
Not very often,
Yeah.
because I mean,
Not as often as they.
because
would
A,
like.
I don't like
Sure.
France, and B, the tickets are expensive. But yeah, I try to go visit.
So you don't like France?
Well, no, that's why I don't live there.
Makes sense. Makes
I
sense.
prefer America.
You're one of the few people I've heard say that. You know.
That's
Wow.
because I'm from there. I think it's, I don't know.
People have a it's funny because
I just happen to not like where I'm from. I don't know.
everyone like
I feel like everybody's got a little bit of that in them. You know. Everybody
Yeah,
wants to
I
go
think
out.
so, right?
Yeah.
I
everyone,
mean,
you got to explore and see
It's
something.
like, that's
new.
where you're from. Ugh. Also, it's like a little village.
I worked briefly for a company that was based in Paris, and like we do conference calls with like people in LA, and the guy, the CEO or whatever would be complaining about the weather in Paris. It's 55 degrees. It's raining. It's like, you're in Paris. Everyone on the other end is like, you're in Paris. He's like, yeah, so what? It's
Yeah.
horrible. Yeah.
Well, most Parisians are proud of Paris, though. They're like, oh, we're Parisians.
They're proud they're proud of
But
Paris.
they still complain about
They
the weather.
bitch about it all the
Yeah.
time, though. Yeah.
Right.
But if I had to live in Europe, I'd live in Italy or Spain,
Why is
not
that?
France. Because I love Italy and Spain. My grandmother's Italian, so I feel a connection to Italy.
Mm-hmm.
But I also just love the two countries that I just love.
Do you speak Italian as well?
Yeah, I speak Spanish better than Italian. I mean, I can read Italian,
Mm-hmm.
but the speaking, I'm working on it.
See, that's one of the big things I'm envious of people who are from Europe is like, you're so close to so many other cultures that it's like, you speak French and English and Italian and
Yeah.
Spanish, whereas here it's like we barely speak English,
It's true. In the Scandinavian countries, they all speak like
Yeah.
5 languages because they speak all the different Scandinavian dialects and English,
Yeah.
and some of them speak French. They just Europe is definitely a linguist's paradise.
Yeah.
Hungarian, that's a tough one. That
And
is
yet
the weirdest
people don't,
language.
but people don't really know their neighbors that much either, though. Like, like most French people don't go to Italy that much, for instance, even though
Yeah.
it's right there.
Yeah, I feel like I would take
You know.
advantage.
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of one of those things like, before you move to New York, you're like, oh, I'm going to go to see all the sites, and then you never see anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So
I lived
it's
in New
very
York
similar.
for a while. I never went to the Statue of Liberty. I never went to the top of the Empire State Building because it was just always there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you always think like, oh, I'll see it
Yeah.
when I see it, and then you end up never seeing
Yeah,
it, and
exactly.
you move, and
Yeah.
and
And then you're like, oh,
missed out on that. You mentioned your record label. Is that Zimu Records?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's the
Yep.
label that the new record's on. But you also
Yep.
released the cassette through Lollipop Records.
That's right.
yes. And also one on Burger Records before that.
So
The
kind of
very
like,
first one.
very first one was on Burger
Yeah,
Records.
yeah.
So, and they're like Burger Records and sort of Lollipop Records are kind of like these new purveyors of the LA, like psych scene.
Yep.
So how do you feel like you fit into that scene?
We fit and we don't fit. I think we're part of it, but we're not actively members of the scene. So I think I don't know how that works.
They like us.
But they
and-
like us.
And so they put out our records, and I mean, there's a lot of bands in LA doing that sort of psych 60s revival thing, and some are better than others.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a good thing overall because anything that's, you know, it's vital. I mean, when I say vital, I mean it's vigorous.
Mm-hmm.
It has a lot of energy, and it's, you know, there's a lot of young people doing it, so that's great. But, you know, some of them are just doing basically archaeology, recreating, you know, sounds from the
never
60s.
heard that phrase.
Yeah.
Like archaeology of rock.
But
Yeah.
that's just,
It's
to
true,
me,
though.
that's just my opinion. But you know, because they're young, this is all new to them. You know, you know, they see the birds and they're like, whoa, let's do that.
Yeah.
You know, I bet nobody knows about that. And the guys who run Burger are the nicest guys in the music business, and they're super enthusiastic about what they do. And they deserve all the success that they have. And
Yeah.
similarly, Lollipop, which
Yeah.
is kind of, you know, following their model, are just, you know, they're just really enthusiastic music fans.
Yeah.
Which is a great thing, no matter what.
Well, what amazes me
Yeah.
about Burger Records is the volume.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Oh, they're workaholics.
They are constantly putting
Yeah.
new stuff out. There's always more
Yeah.
shows.
I really respect their worth ethic.
for stoners, they sure do a hell of a job. of
It's
putting out-
amazing. Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's amazing how productive stoners
Yeah.
can
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
be,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
all they do. They live in the store. Like they sleep there. They work there. Like 24/7.
And they're
It's
at
amazing.
every record convention, every
Yeah.
opening of every festival,
Yeah.
you know, with a little burger booth with all
Sure.
the
Yeah.
tapes and
But that's really how you make it now these days.
Yeah.
is You,
Yeah.
you really have to be
Yeah.
everywhere. And, you know, back
Yeah.
to kind of how the music industry's changed. You know, before you get on a record label and the distribution deal gets you into all these stores. Well, now
Right.
those stores don't exist.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So it's like you got to be on Spotify and you got to be on Apple Music and you got to be
Yeah.
on every one of these outlets, and then you got to send it to people directly and do all sorts of stuff. So, what
Yeah.
have you found has been the most successful avenue for you to reach your fans?
I think it's still directly through, you know, whether it's Bandcamp or at shows.
Yeah, I think
you know?
touring is definitely the surefire thing. I mean,
Yeah.
we've done radio stuff, you know, where the guy, you know, services college radio
College
and all
radio.
that stuff, and it does well. But touring, I think, is the thing. It's
Yeah.
like people need to see you live.
Yeah, and
Playing
I think
shows.
that kind of, you know, to circle back to this modern confusion,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's like we have this world where everything's accessible all the time, but I feel like people still crave that one-on-one interaction.
Oh, and it's going to be more and more like that as things get standardized and, you know, all the same, all accessible, all at the same time.
Right.
You know,
There's
like the
just
experience
you're
becomes
spoiled
more
for
valuable.
choice. It's impossible to choose. It's impossible to find.
Yeah.
You know, with all the thousands of new releases out there, how are you supposed to stand out? How do you separate the signal from the noise? There's like,
Yeah.
you know, you can do one of two things. You can listen to everything Pitchfork says, or you can just use your own mind and, you know, go to
Yeah.
shows and check things out for yourself.
Yeah, and that's the best way to do it. I think.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
you know, do you really make that connection with the band and you remember the experience that
Yeah.
you had, and that's worth a lot more than the ones and zeros that are coming out of the computer.
Yeah,
Absolutely,
totally.
100%.
Anything real quick you want to say about Tampa? You've been here for almost 12 hours now, 14
Yeah.
hours in Tampa.
Yeah, so I'm like, well, we found out about the hub pour
Okay.
Which is
where we played, and we didn't, you know.
which was a hit with our rhythm section.
Who are still upstairs in the hotel
Yes, they're
room
recovering
sleeping.
from the hub pour.
Right.
Yeah, it seems like a really cool city. So,
Yeah.
and we learned about the reason
cigar.
it's Cigar City, and that was something I did not know at all
Yeah.
before. And
I like the paved streets, like
Yeah,
that area
cobblestone.
near the cigar store.
the cobblestone.
Ybor
Yeah.
City is what
Is
it's
that
called.
It's
Ybor
pretty
City? So
cool.
that's a
Yeah.
cool section. There's a really good coffee shop there.
Yeah. Shout out to Blind Tiger.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shout out to Blind Tiger.
Yeah.
The audience was awesome. They were very
Yeah,
lively and
that was
enthusiastic.
maybe our best
so-
audience on
Yeah.
this leg of the tour so
Yeah.
far.
That makes me
Yeah.
I
for
feel
sure.
that in my heart. I'm happy to
Yeah.
hear that Tampa
Yeah.
Nice.
was one of the best audiences. And yeah, you played at the legendary Tampa Dive Bar, the Hub.
Yeah.
See, we didn't know it was legendary, so like that would have put more pressure. I'm glad I didn't know.
But yeah, no, they were. I mean, they were just like really into it,
Yeah.
and I don't know. I mean, maybe it was because of the hub pour, but I like to think that they,
Yeah.
you know, that we because
Yeah.
they definitely were into it.
Yeah.
We live we're a little bit wilder, let's say, than on the record.
As you should be.
Like,
Yeah, people kind of expect us to be quiet and more poppy, and we're not. So there's confusion there too sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's great though. And that's awesome to hear. So, thank you guys for coming to our city. A lot of people skip Tampa.
Oh, really?
And skip Florida in general because, as you know, driving from Pensacola, it's like to get here, you have to really commit to this area.
No, a lot of
We like
bands,
Florida. I like playing in Florida a lot.
One of Goodbye Voice's biggest or favorite towns was Orlando. So I had fond memories of coming to Florida.
Well, there you go. You heard it here first from DTCV, Detective, James Greer, and Lola G. Tampa is the best city to come on tour. I'm definitely paraphrasing what you said, but we're just going to make that
Come
statement
to Tampa,
now.
people.
Come to Tampa, come on tour, and you can go on our show while you're here. So
There you go.
Absolutely.
And play at the Hub.
All right, well, let's get out of here before they charge us.